remembering that every aspect of every story is an element of ourselves. Let's see if this story can bring that circle around, close that link, so that another link in the chain of stories can be formed. There was a simple tailor who was very adept at designing, cutting, and sewing the most exquisite garments. And this came to the attention of a prince of the realm, who came to visit the tailor, and finding it to be so, from that time on, he had all his royal robes of office and his uniforms made by the tailor. Over the years, a very firm friendship grew up between them, and the prince would often visit the small store of the tailor, where he loved to watch him as he deftly cut and sewed the garments. Now, even when the tailor's wife had a son, the prince sent a gift, a box, to the tailor and his wife with a card inside which said, "Here is a piece of the finest cloth that one can find in the land. Keep it, and when your son grows, make him a cloak and let him know that this is a gift from your friend, the prince." Now, as is the way with such things, the tailor and his wife very carefully put the box away and promptly forgot about it. And the years passed. But then one day, a messenger in full regalia, on a finely caparisoned horse, rode up to the door of the tailor's store and handed him a card. This card was an invitation to the tailor and his family to join the prince in a 2-day celebration, which included a grand ball to celebrate his birthday. Well, the tailor was beside himself with joy. He lifted up his wife and danced around the kitchen with her. "Look, my friend, the prince has invited us to his birthday." And the wife somewhat threw cold water on this by saying, "But we're simple peasant people. How can we go to this grand affair? I have only a simple dress to wear." But the tailor was adamant. "The prince is my friend, and he's invited us to his party." So on the first day of these celebrations, the tailor and his wife and their son, now a young man, went off down the road towards the prince's palace. On the way, they were passed by these grand coaches inhabited by lords and ladies of the realm. And the tailor's wife was in great trepidation, but the tailor was still elated by this invitation. But when they came to the door of the palace, and the tailor handed his invitation to the footman at the door. The footman said, "What are you commoners doing here?" The tailor said, "I have an invitation from the prince. Here it is." But the footman handed it back to the tailor with very great disdain and said, "I don't know how you came about this, but you cannot enter here. Look at you, commoners." Well, the tailor was quite upset, and he tried again and again to convince the footman, but by this time there were a number of lords and ladies who were waiting to enter the reception hall. So with more disdain, the footman grabbed the tailor by the scruff of his neck and threw him down into the dust at the bottom of the stairs. The tailor was distraught, embarrassed, abashed, and ashamed, and he and his wife and son made their way back to their small store. But on the way, the tailor had a thought. He remembered the piece of cloth in the box that had been given to him by the prince. So he said, "I'm going to make a cloak." And turning to his son, he said, "And you are going to the ball tomorrow night." The tailor went home, and he worked throughout the night, cutting and sewing the beautiful piece of cloth that had been given to him into a magnificent cloak. And the next night, even though his son begged that he did not want to go, he did not want to be shamed and embarrassed once again, the father insisted that he put on the cloak and go to the ball. So the son, in great fear, even though when putting on this magnificent cloak he seemed to grow in stature, presented himself with the invitation to the footman at the door, and to the son's very great surprise, the footman bowed to him in respect and took his invitation and said, "Oh, this is an invitation from the prince's hand himself. Welcome, come in." So the young man was taken to one of the leading tables in the reception hall and placed there amongst the magnificent food that was laying out for the guests there. But as the son sat there and saw this grand display, something grew inside of him. It was anger. It was anger. Here, his father, friend of the prince, being tossed out in the dirt for being a commoner. So the son, with this great force rising up in him, stood up in front of the throng, and he took off his cloak, and he said to the cloak, "Let's dance." So he got out on the dance floor with his cloak, and lifting up the sleeve, he waltzed around the middle of the ballroom. And then he said to his cloak, "Oh, you dance very well, but would you like something to eat?" So he took his cloak over to the table and began to feed it and pour the wine from the goblets on the table over the cloak. All the guests were affronted, and finally the young man was taken over to the prince and stood before him, the prince saying to him, "How can you embarrass me in this way? Why do you mock me?" And the son explained. Suddenly it dawned on the prince, and he said, "Where is my friend the tailor? Where is he?" And with that the prince called the footman, the butler. And the butler, with great embarrassment, said that a commoner had come the day before and been tossed out. The prince said, "Take my coach and go and bring my friend, the tailor, and his wife, no matter what they're wearing, back here to me." So, to the great surprise of the tailor and his wife, the tailor in his pajamas and his wife in her robe, being taken in the royal carriage back to the palace, where the king, the prince, arose and bowed in front of his friend, the peasant tailor, welcoming him, acknowledging their friendship of many years, and then turning to the tailor's wife in her robe and slippers, he bowed to her and said, "Madam, will you dance with me?" And taking the tailor's wife, he took her out into the middle of the ballroom and waltzed her round the floor. The prince said, "Where is the young man who came last evening?" The tailor brought his son forward, who began to apologize. "I'm so sorry." But the prince said, "No, I need such as you in my palace. Come to work for me." And so it happened that the tailor's son became one of the prince's trusted advisors. All elements of every story being part of ourselves, part of our psyche. What does this simple story bring up for us? Perhaps allowing this circle to be closed, this link to be joined. What is it that's happened in your life that's depicted in this story? The simple tailor, the prince of the realm. What is it that comes together for us? Demonstrated by those aspects of this story. What is it that's merged in you?
For me, it's be real. The story says be real. Be true to yourself.
Right.
Cut the bullshit.
Okay.
I think we all have a feeling of unworthiness, and that we cannot be part of this enormous thing, that we're separate from it. And yet we are.
Indeed. Isn't it so?
It's interesting how I got the tail end of the story, but it's interesting how sometimes we think the truth needs to be told, and so we'll say something as the raw truth. But sometimes when you tell the truth, it causes harm.
Mm-hmm.
Other times you tell the truth, it brings about change.
Yeah.
Other times you tell the truth and it brings about a wholesale change or transformation. So it takes discrimination powers to know when to speak and when not to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like the young man who became the advisor at the end basically said the truth.
Yes.
And the king appreciated that in the end, but he wasn't so sure that he had when he was brought back to the palace. So it's telling the truth can be good, but it can lead to regrets as well.
Certainly, we know.
So it feels for me like a little courage to stand in that truth regardless of what, not even thinking of the outcome. It's just, you say it rises in you and you would die just to whatever's going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, thank you.